Today on the CEO Barbecue, we're looking for gold and copper in Côte d'Ivoire together with Awale resources. If you want a bullet point summary of this conversation and all the other CEO barbecues in your inbox once a week, go to resourcetalks.com and subscribe to our free newsletter. Now, the company you're about to hear from has paid us for the production of this video, which means that this is not research, it's an advertisement, and you should treat it as such. However, I do personally own shares of this company, so I am to be considered biased. Research is conducted by reading the company's official filings, which you can find on setterplus.ca. And please only watch this if you absolutely know what you're doing. This interview is intended only for experienced junior mining speculators, because mineral exploration, development, and mining is a very tough business where failure is the norm and should be the expectation. This is going to be a conversation that is general and impersonal in nature, containing forward-looking statements. I am not a licensed financial advisor, and my business sells content-producing services, which also makes me biased in multiple ways. So before continuing on, please talk to an independent investment advisor with a good long-term track record, because your capital might be at risk. If you're not 100% sure you understand 100% of the disclaimers I just showed you, please go to the last section of this video and do not consume this content unless you fully understand and agree with everything said therein. That all said, Awale is listed as ARIC, so that's ARIC on the TSX Ventures Exchange. No need for an overly long intro here, though. Andrew has been on the barbecue almost as often as I have. So I'll post the playlist containing those previous interviews in the description of this video for people new to the story to have a look at it. Do have a look at it. We've talked about anything and everything from the jurisdiction through the rocks, everything in depth. So there's lots of good content in there to check out. Right now, though, I feel it's time for me to shut up already. And Andrew, let you do the talking. But first of all, thank you for being here today.
It's good to be back, Antonio. It's been a few months, so yeah, good to be back.
It has, and the pleasure is all mine. I'm looking forward to today's conversation because you've essentially had three decently sized news releases to discuss since we last spoke. Two drilling updates, one on your 100% owned lands, one on Empire, and then Fortuna Mining. Fortuna Mining has just given you 8.2 million Canadian dollars in a non-brokered, non-warrant financing, with that latter part being the one that pleases me the most. I have a bit of a quarrel against warrants, but that's a bit personal there. There's also a bit of a premium to your VWAP as well. And so that's where I want to start, because I was actually a bit surprised to see Fortuna do an equity level financing to begin with essentially no direct control over the project, because as far as I understand it, their default move is project level earn-ins or options. JVs, essentially. If I recall correctly, what they've done recently, even with one of your neighbors, Turaco, they did an earn-in on the Ivorian project. And before that, Riverside in Mexico, they also did an earn-in on that project, on the project level, essentially. With you, though, it's equity. And I suppose this question might be better suited for Fortuna itself. But what do you think drove this deal, and why are they taking a different approach with you?
The easiest way to put it is we'd been talking to Fortuna for some time, and we were quite clear that with our previous experience on the project level, we thought as a company we lost too much value too quickly. So we were quite clear that we really were only interested in equity level investments. And, there were other people that looked as well, and it was the same narrative with others. And so Fortuna came and did their site, an initial site visit. And then, we met I met Jorge for the first time, the CEO, and effectively the narrative remained the same around that discussion. And then I think what sealed it for them to find that comfort was they did a second site visit, and they actually came with a full team. So the CEO came, the CFO, their VPX, and their West Africa manager, and the West African exploration manager. So there was a full team. Which included, the West Africa manager, and their exploration manager was for Côte d'Ivoire, so who would come on the initial site visit. And I think from that, it became clear that we are a well-organised group, and we've with our initial exploration and the funding that we've had from Newmont on the joint venture, we've achieved a lot on a small budget and with high quality exploration. So I think from that perspective, there is a level of comfort with how Awale operates and how we do our exploration. And it was evident at that point that we were preparing for the fact that we would have effectively a joint venture brownfields project with Newmont, and we'd put together a regional exploration team so we could run things in parallel. And so from just a purely Awale perspective, I think they could understand that it made sense that we were well set up to do the same thing on the 100% of property, the 100% Awale properties, to create that value in a prudent fashion. And the fact that we've always said that we're in a different environment geologically. It's not your classic Birimian West African greenstone belt fare, and we've built intellectual property, I guess, from all the work that we've done in the district so far on those Newmont joint venture permits. So I think that's what kind of sets us aside in a way. And then I can't speak to the Mexican project level Riverside that you were talking about, but from I guess from Turaco's perspective, what they joint ventured as well is different to what their flagship is. So they are entirely focused on the FEMA project out there in the southeast of Côte d'Ivoire, and so potentially it made sense for everyone for Fortuna to be earning in on at a project level on the area, or an area that was not a priority or flagship for Turaco. So I mean, I can't speak to what discussions were had there, but potentially that made more sense for Turaco as well. But it's definitely something out of the ordinary for Fortuna, because they have tended to make project level joint ventures rather than equity investments. So we do see that as a vote of confidence in what we do, and we've said it all along. And if, I guess, for listeners or people out there, they hear me say this, but I guess, where's the evidence? And so I think the evidence is there now in that with the Newmont JV, we've spent something like $12 million now, and Newmont's still got comfort in having Awale manage the project as that has kept advancing over the last couple of years. So there's been no move to change from that perspective. And then now Fortuna's actually come and understood how we operate, and have found that level of comfort to come in at an equity level.
Because they don't get a board seat or anything like that, right? I think you're forming a joint committee or something, but it's essentially an exchange of brains, not much more, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, effectively, that's what it is. It's called a technical committee. We have one of those with Newmont as well. It's the same thing. So we'll have a kickoff meeting with Fortuna in the not too distant future. That's coming just down the road. Where what we'll start to do. So what we do is we give an outline of an exploration plan and milestones for the next 12 months. So when the field season starts again after the wet season, and have a discussion around what those milestones are, and I think we're effectively we agree on what those milestones are and what the budget is going to be for that period, and then that's updated quarterly. So we have quarterly updates, and I think the fact that the other thing is with them is their sort of West Africa manager, Pat Manoog. I mean, I know him personally from his previous jobs as well. So, there's always open lines of communication. So we've got a bit of an Aussie network there as well, because their VP Exploration is an Australian as well. So we've got very open lines of communication with them anyway. So there's plenty of communication in between those tech committee meetings as well.
Everyone's always talking. Is it the Chinese? Is it the Russians who are going to get more influence in Africa? It might turn out it's the Aussies after all. That'd be a fun sight. What about Newmont? I mean, how did Newmont react to this investment? I assume you'd have to inform them before that. And what was their reaction? What do they think?
Oh, look, I mean, everyone knows we're all running a business. And so, of course, we told Newmont long ago that other companies were becoming interested in Awale and more in the 100% properties, because there is the project level joint venture with them. So they were very aware that other companies were coming on site and seeing the drill core that was coming out of the ground and so forth on the joint venture. So I don't think, I mean, they didn't say anything in particular, but, I don't think they're surprised, because we do have open communication with the Newmont team as well. So I don't think they would see it as a surprise. And, other people, the people within Newmont, I even got, congratulations, well done. Because they understand that we're running a business. So we just continue with the project level joint venture with Newmont, and then we open the door and start working with Fortuna on the 100% properties. And that's the other thing that I didn't mention just before is I think with another technical team looking at what we've achieved, in that smaller area at ODNA within the joint venture, there's an understanding that these sort of systems tend to be bigger than they do continue along strike. They're not restricted to sort of one 400-kilometre square area, and so I think it's a sort of bit of a tick of approval that what we've been telling everyone is that we are on a big plumbing system. Like it's a big alteration system, and there's been lots of fluid flow, and so there is potential to find standalone resources on 100% Awale ground, and we really haven't even we haven't scratched the surface. We're just starting out on those things. So there is also like the blue sky potential. Maybe what we've actually drilled within the joint venture is not actually what you would call the center of gravity. And there might be something bigger on the 100% ground as well, which is really quite nice to think about. But we have to do the work and see what that is.
That is definitely quite nice to think about. That's one way to put it. Talk to me a little bit more about how that relationship with Newmont is going on now, though, because they did not participate in this financing, although they do have top-up rights, if I'm not mistaken. Are they just focused on the JV, and that's why they didn't participate on the equity level, or what's the deal there?
Yeah, I think you've answered the question. They're focused on the joint venture, so they're earning in on that, and so Newmont have been extreme up to the last financing that we did. They've been extremely supportive of me and the company when we made the change back in 2023, and so I guess they look at it as well as the point of view. Okay, Awale's found its legs, and we're now focused on the joint venture, and we're comfortable with Awale as a company and how it operates. So, and then their focus moves to the JV.
What about managing the relationship there between the different large parties that are involved? You've got Newmont, Fortuna, Sandstorm also has an involvement here. How do you manage that relationship? Does it kind of manage itself? Is it challenging? Talk to me more about that.
I don't think it's challenging, and you just keep those, it just keep those lines of communication open with everyone, and it's okay. There's not been, there's definitely no animosity between Awale and Newmont from Fortuna coming in as an investor. And they, like I said, they understand that we're running a business, and so it does from the Newmont perspective. We need to do a lot more exploration to turn this into a Newmont scale, potentially a Newmont scale project. And I think they probably understand that too at a deeper level. So from an Awali perspective, having Fortuna on board just puts us in a really nice position as well. So where, I guess Fortuna would look at it as we're investing in the 100% Awali properties, but we don't know what's going to happen with the joint venture, and maybe that becomes a bonus where there's a position where Newmont talks to us about an exit, and we move on from there. So that puts us in really good standing there, and then from the other perspective, there is Newmont staying in, and we get to the end of the earn-in period. So we call it a joint venture, but it's not a joint venture yet. It's an earn-in. So they get to the end of their earn-in, and we have 2 million ounces of gold and have spent that $15 million US dollars. Then at that juncture, Awale needs to consider whether we're co-contributing our 25% towards that spend on drilling and exploration. And I think while we try and work out whether we're on a tier one project or a mid-tier project as far as the joint venture ground is concerned, that it's prudent for Awale to hold its position. And Fortuna is an excellent backer and understands that as well. So we've now got a roughly 16 million Canadian dollar treasury post this investment. And so we are well positioned that at the end of this year, if we've met the terms of the earn-in and Newmont, we've worked through a joint venture agreement with Newmont moving forward, and we're well positioned to be funding our 25% of that, as well as doing the good work on the 100% Awale ground.
What if they don't want to continue with the same structure as it is now? What if they do think like, oh, we're looking for 5 million ounces. We think there's 2 or 3 or whatever here. We don't want to move forward. Are you ready and able to work your own stuff essentially if you have to?
Yeah. So I mean, if Newmont want to not spend money on the joint venture anymore, that would be a position for us to be have it, taking the properties back. And so I think Fortuna. Well, that's that's where it's nice to have Fortuna as a 15% holder of Awale, because we've got that cornerstone backing to take 100% of the projects back.
Right.
If Newmont did decide that they weren't there before the end of the earn-in period, it's quite clear in the earn-in that we pay $2 million US dollars to Newmont. The percentage ownership goes to 49 Newmont, 51% Awale, with a dilution beyond that. And so it just depends on where Newmont get to when they make their decisions. But and I can't predict what their decisions are and things like that. But I think whatever outcome comes out of that, we're either on a Newmont are in, and everyone's a true believer on a tier one scale project moving forward, or Newmont decide that they're going to step back. We organise to have the property, purchase the properties back, depending on whether it's pre or post the earn-in. And that's either way, I think that's a good thing for Awale, and a good thing for a cornerstone shareholder in the company as well, because the project value should increase accordingly, whatever it is from those two potential outcomes.
Well, sounds like you've thought about it before, which is actually interesting to me to hear. Because again, you didn't know this question was coming or that any of these questions are coming. But do you think there's room for more strategics? Like if any of the other large players in the region wanted a piece down the road, is the current share structure adequate enough to facilitate that?
I think it just depends on what that proposition is. And you talk about relationships and managing all those things. How many players do you need in the dance? I think that you would never say no if it makes sense, but you would have to assess that on a case by case basis. And if it doesn't make sense, I don't think we've got as a company at the moment an issue with funding things moving forward, no matter what those outcomes are. And I think we're in a position where we can be, we're actually can be serious about saying we'll be funding those things at an increasing share price, not, so our cost of capital should be going down. And we've got plenty of runway to take us to that next juncture, whenever that may be, and when our cost of capital is less.
How much runway would you say that is that you have right now? 16 million Canadian in terms of timeline, but as in terms of work, how far does it get you?
At least 2 years and discoveries on the 100% ground, and so that's okay. I mean, if Newmont back out, then maybe it's a bit of a different story, because we may need to find more money more quickly, or we make a significant discovery on the 100% ground, and we're looking to accelerate that as well. So. These are possibilities that come, but like I say, particularly if we make a discovery on the 100% ground and we're looking to accelerate that, I'm sure that our cost of capital will be a lot less.
Well, let's just say I'm happy that the board is where the board is right now, relative to about a year and a half ago. So that thing is not necessarily too much of a worry, I suppose. Let's maybe fantasize a little bit though, or we'll be forward looking, if you will, to the best of our abilities. But if Fortuna would be, I don't know, the obvious builder of any potential mining operation in ODNA as opposed to Newmont, how big would an asset have to be? Like, how big of an asset would we be looking at that point? Because, you've told me that Newmont, again, doesn't get out of bed for less than 5 million ounces. But what about Fortuna? What are they hoping for? What is the profile of the assets that they need or want or like?
Oh, look, it's you look at something like Seguela, and when they got started in there, it was really sort of a 1 million ounce asset, right? So if you go back to the NI 43-101 back in 2023, 2024, when they were getting their mining license and all that sort of stuff, I think it was a bit over 1 million ounces that, like, in reserve, that asset at that time. So the hurdles are much more. I mean, for Fortuna, as long as they're making money, it comes down to that cash flow analysis, NPV, but I think if it's making money, they're quite happy, and they think differently, right? So potentially, even if there's all this upside potential, and you get, that's the thing, upside potential, there is plenty of blue sky within our project. So, starting on something that's got 7 years of production and then continuing to explore, I don't think that's a hindrance to what Fortuna's thinking about at all. I can't speak for them for sure, but based on what they're doing.
Yeah. So it is about money after all. I thought it was the charming Aussie accent and the blue eyes that had made them, get that investment over the line. Let's talk about what actually did get him to, make that investment, which is the 100% ground that you've got there. You've just got some news today, actually, from Fremen. I'm hoping this video is going to be able to go out today. So on the same day that you have this news release out, although that might be pushing in terms of timing, but you're not Yet calling this a discovery. I'm not seeing discovery language in this news release. Essentially, how come?
No, I mean, I would rather see. I mean, what we've seen is really encouraging, and because it is scout drilling, and we're looking to see where we are. We always talk about where are we, and along with that, we've extended the geochem anomaly significantly. So the geochem anomaly further south is actually larger. We've got a longer strike length than where we've done the initial scout drilling as well. So, you know, for me, or for us, we want to see intercepts that you could say are potentially economic widths and grades, right? In at least one drill hole, but hopefully more than one. So what we're seeing in the drilling that we have done is that there's a couple of lines that have shown that there are broad mineralized shear zones, like they are shears. So they're high strain zones with mineralization that's greater than 0.2 grams per ton gold. And that's telling us that we're chasing the right structure. You know, we were fairly confident with the IP and the geochemistry that we'd done, but you know, drilling those holes gives you that confidence and means that we need to do, you know, more discovery drilling on those, as well as start some discovery drilling on that new sort of zone to the south of Fremen there. And so, you know, for me, I still consider it all as the Fremen target, despite it being 8 kilometers long now. But you know, where the center of gravity is along that structure, we don't know yet, and it's pretty exciting stuff.
What would you want to see there in order to call it a discovery more specifically, like in terms of grades and widths? What would a discovery in this specific setting look like?
You know, that 20, 30 meter wide, well, that 20 odd meter wide zone at over a gram would be pretty encouraging for us. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm wondering about how much more work you think it's going to take to essentially, I don't know, turn Fremen into the Lisan Al Gaib.
I don't know. I mean, we'll see. Let's see what happens with the drilling that we're about to start on the 5 kilometer zone. And we will drill some more holes in that initial Fremen area after the wet season. So we'll do some diamond holes so we understand the geology better on that. But you know, there's potential for that to have, you know, to have what we would are comfortable calling a discovery in the second half of this year.
Okay.
If it's there, like I've always say, if it's there, we'll find it. But we just need to keep doing that systematic work.
Yeah, that's a good point that you make there, because it is essentially everything that we're talking about is forward looking, and it's more of me trying to understand where do you go looking for it, and if it's there, you find it, but it also has to be there in the first place, and that's not something you control. But what is it that you do? I don't know, differently, or where do you drill it next time to deliver that discovery again, if it's there?
I think look at it. You just got to keep looking at the geology and the geochemistry. So we will you know we're getting quite good with how we utilize our geochemistry, how we utilize our multiple element geochemistry to vector on where we are along the shear. Look, it's clear that the BBM is a little bit different from what we're seeing like in the Cienzo permit, in that we're not getting as much copper, but we're still visually seeing moly in some of the chips. Like, so there's molybdenum kicking around, and at BBM there's pretty much almost like a 1-to-1 ratio of moly. It's not the same grade, but where we get the higher grade moly, we tend to get higher grade gold. So that's encouraging. But you know, we've always said that everything in the Odiani district is on this, you know, continuum where we have higher grade gold zones versus, you know, more copper, or you know, it scales between. So we're not perturbed by the fact that we're not seeing as much copper in the geochemistry. or the drilling that we've done in the PXRF. We haven't done multi-element on those yet, but we systematically use the PXRF. So that's not of concern to us because we know that there is zonation in these systems. So we might be looking at, which would be nice anyway, like a more gold-rich M member further along strike within the CNSO permits or that Fremen target. So that's just how it is. So we just keep doing that systematic work. Are we seeing? And we know that it's strain controlled. We are seeing high strain in the drill chips. We're seeing the right indicators that we're chasing the right structure. So we just keep doing the work, Antonio, and that's where it is.
What is this target looking like the most right now? Is it that BBM or something else? And why I'm asking this is because you just mentioned shears instead of a fold hinge, for example. So
Yeah.
what is it looking like the most?
Yeah, so BBM.
Okay.
So BBM's a high strain story. So you get, so there's very high strain and so where that fluid overpressure release is in that really high strain. And so, effectively the target is something similar to BBM.
Or are you thinking it's similar to BBM, or is it going to be a satellite to BBM, or is that the main thing and BBM is a satellite to it? I mean, there's a couple of different
Well,
options.
we're still always looking for something standalone, right? So it's either or. But especially with a five, that anomalism continuing all the way along, we look at it and go, okay, there really is potential for standalone here, which is that sort of million ounce kind of potential that is a sort of a the rainbow, the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, if you like, is that million ounce reserve for long-term production.
And because and also this is within the topic of what you previously told me, but also what I've read in this news release is that you talk about the center of gravity may ultimately reside within the 100% owned ground. What does that mean? I mean, is this more of you, I don't know, becoming better at marketing, or is it something that actually means something? Like, what does that mean?
Well, no, it is. Well, it's just a reality now that we're starting on the 100% ground and we haven't looked in there and there are in the regional mag there are other zones of structural complexity, which is good for mineralization, especially in when it's in the same system. So they're definitely the permit to the north of us, which is the Seydu permit. There's definitely some large zones of structural complexity in there, and we're excited to get in there and have a look. And on the Cienso, the Cienso permit where Fremen is, it's a long strike from BBM. We're seeing high strain along that structure. We're seeing potassic alteration, like the right alteration. So we're seeing potassic alteration. We're seeing plenty of biotite and feldspar, and we're also getting the hematite dusting so there's the hematite alteration as well. So it's the ingredients are there, and we just need to keep working at it.
Well, keep working at it. You see, but I also see that you're only going to be drilling 1,200 meters on this new 5-kilometer anomaly. Essentially, that doesn't sound like a lot for something finding the center of gravity. Why only 1,200 meters?
Look, it's always upscalable depending on what we see, right? So
Sure.
we've planned five. I think it's five. It is five drill lines along that 5 kilometers. There's quite a decent spacing between those 5 drill lines, but so the first 3 lines are I guess what you would call priority 1. And then the other ones are priority 2. So, if we're seeing the right alteration again, in that drilling, we'll probably actually spread the wings out to the extremities of that anomaly. So those other two lines that are further sort of northwest and southeast of where the initial three are. And, potentially we can, yeah, so, and maybe based on what we see, we can actually do some other follow-up in there as well. So this is the nice thing about having having the runway that we've got, is that, we're not restricted in what we do, but what we plan, so we can do follow-up quite quickly. And we're not worried about having to go back to market and say, oh, so we've got that treasury to make sure that we do things properly. But like I said, we're prudent. So we don't just go and pepper things with thousands of meters of drilling. We like to understand where we are, and then bring in more. And the BBM discovery was the same. I mean, we were fortunate with BBM in that the first 4 drill holes, we did announce that as a discovery. We did get those broad intercepts at over a gram that I was talking about. The market didn't actually read those. That was back in February, and we followed up. I think we followed that up with 12 more holes, and effectively re-announced it again in sort of March, April, and then people actually started to believe that was a discovery, and then we drilled the big hole at Charger. But the share price, people had actually recognised BBM as a discovery before that Charger hole. We sort of shifted off that 10-cent odd share price up to about 25 based on those further 12 BBM holes that we'd done, and then the Charger hole came out. But we keep. This is the thing, we keep I think we know what we're doing, and so we will continue to do things that way.
Hmm. You don't own a rig, if I'm not mistaken,
No,
or do you? Yeah.
no.
So what do you think? Just one rig, I suppose, on the 100% stuff that's going to be turning, and then you have your separate exploration program on the JV. Is that how it's going to be?
Look, there's always going to be rigs around with the joint venture. There'll be a lot of drilling on the joint venture coming forward, and effectively, on those 2 permits that we've just had granted to the north, Sama and Sadu, we've just been doing the stream sediment geochemistry now. We'll get the results for that over the wet season, and so I think in late this year or early next year, we'll see a lot more. We'll see drilling on those permits as well. So I'm not concerned about whether we've got a rig permanently on site, but because I think between the joint venture and the 100% ground, there'll always be rigs around our project.
Hmm. How deep do you have to drill it this time?
Sorry?
How deep do you think you're going to drill it this time?
On the 100% things?
Yeah.
Oh, look, they're scout holes. So, we plan what we call top to tail or heel to toe fences of drill holes where the hole is collared straight, or a little bit, where the holes are collared above each other, if you like, the end of hole and the top of hole, so you don't miss things. And they're planned to about 100 meters depth.
Hmm.
And then sort of we find out where we are with that sort of drilling, and then we think about deeper holes beyond that.
What about timing here? Because the results that you had come in today, which is June 16, I suppose they're technically on time because you had said Q2, so it's still it's Q2, right? Yeah, it's Q2.
Yeah.
And so, but on the later side, right? It was not that much. I had personally expected them sooner. They were maybe slowed down or not. Talk to me about that, and talk to me about what you expect in terms of timelines here.
Yeah, we did have a bit of a slowdown with the lab. So they actually, for whatever reason, I don't know exactly what the reason was, but there was an issue with, once the samples were prepped, there was an issue with samples getting caught up for export. I don't know the internal machinations of the lab and why that happened, but it did. So that sort of slowed everything down a little bit. So, but we're getting, things are starting to flow through again now. So, we will see in the ensuing weeks, BBM satellite drilling, Charger and Lando, which are the last ones to come through. And then, so yeah, and then what we're about to start drilling now on the 100%. what we're looking at there is, I mean, we've got freedom to use a different lab as well. So potentially we might start doing them with a different lab and see if we can get a better turnaround time on the gold with those. And at the moment, stick with our PXRF and then go back and selectively sample things for multi-element. Beyond that. So, I think we would be able to report, PXRF results with the gold results with a, caveat that it is PXRF. But, with the joint venture, it's been quite clear on the joint venture that we need to report ICP results, particularly around BBM, because it is a copper and gold system. So even though Newmont's involved and like to have their ICP for everything, we also made a conscious decision that we shouldn't be reporting BBM without the ICP results because copper is an important part of that. And I feel like, well, the conscious decision made is not just how I feel, is we didn't want to report PXRF and then go back and say this is the ICP beyond that. It's confusing. And so there was a decision made to look. Let's just be clear to market where we are, and with results. And this is the gold, and this is the copper, and this is the moly, and the complete clarity on what those assay results are. So I mean it's generally the ICP that's the bigger delay because it's got to be sent internationally.
Yeah. See, Andrew, if you are going to be getting better at marketing, especially the Canadian style, you're supposed to report those PXRF results and just call it the next world-class discovery. No asterisks, no nothing. I mean, that's
not the Awale way.
And jokes aside, I appreciate that is not and has not been the Awale way since the beginning, since I was, since I've been paying attention. Do you believe the IOCG thesis is still intact or at least for Fremen, though, given that the grades you've reported now, although low again, are mostly copper, are mostly gold and no copper is what I mean. So IOCG, the C, it's kind of on the lower end, right? So
it's all part of that continuum or that spectrum. So, the alteration that we're seeing is still the same. There are in the regional mag, we're about to fly detailed aeromag over our 100% properties, but you can still pick out that there are these intrusions within the system there as well, and so all those chemistry signatures are still the same. Like it's still all part of that same system. And in those iron oxide copper gold systems, you do, as we've always discussed, you have gold rich M members, you have things that are somewhere in between, you have copper rich M members. So, it's all still part of that same plumbing system.
Yeah. I'm essentially doing a bit of 75 IQ thinking here because that's the only thinking I can really do. But I'm thinking letter by letter, IOCG essentially. And so the I kind of have a check mark on it because of the hematite alteration. But what about specifically the O of that? What about the oxide profile on the shallower portions of Fremen? Is that developed enough?
It's just referring to hematite.
Okay.
So iron oxide and magnetite. So they're both iron oxides. So that's what that's referring to. The nomenclature is changing. So if you read if you look at the more recent papers, there are various authors calling these things iron, copper, gold. They've actually taken the O out, perhaps to avoid confusion and perhaps giving particular deposit types the O, but it's all still part of the same system. Yeah.
Some people call it, some people call some of the deposits on IOA, if I'm not mistaken, whatever that means.
Yeah, iron oxide apatite. So that's way at one end of the spectrum. Okay, IOA. So this is the thing. This is why this and so I think there is more. There's always more work done on these iron, copper, gold systems because they are huge. They're huge contributors to the global metal inventory. So academically, there is significant interest, and so there's more and more understanding. And so I think as IOCG became a term. I mean, I'm getting a bit old now, but IOCG became a term when I was doing my some honors work, and so that's back in the like 90s, late 90s. Really, it started to really come out as something. So the idea of iron oxide copper gold systems is very young. And so the understanding of that different distribution in that spectrum is getting narrowed down as more work is done on these systems. I don't want to delve into that too much, but it is changing. And I started to, if people ever want to have a look at London Geological Society talk I did, it's on our YouTube. I sort of start to touch on some of those more technical things in that talk.
Yeah, that is a good point. That is a good presentation, not your typical, again, promotion of a presentation, but good to understand these kind of systems. What is the depth at which the oxidation transitions to mixed or fresh rock across the Fremen footprint? Have you hit that?
What was the depth of oxide at Fremen?
Yes.
We're seeing it a little bit deeper out there as well. Around around BBM, it's like 5 to 10 meters, like the transition from oxide, maybe 20 meters max. Whereas we're actually seeing fully oxidized kind of clay zones much deeper, even down to like 50 meters downhole. So like 30, 40 meters in that drilling at Fremen. It's that oxide profile is changing, or the weathering profile is changing. That's what you don't want to get confused with. So that's the weathering profile, but you can still have fluids that are oxidizing, and that's why you get hematite as opposed to magnetite, because it's more oxidizing. But that's fluid chemistry, and that can still happen in the fresh rock, right? So, but yeah, the oxide profile is deeper, or the weathering profile is the better way to put it, is deeper as we're moving out into that Cienso drilling area.
And does that align, like if it goes deeper, does it align with lithology or topography with BBM? Is it looking the same essentially?
The topography is very similar. It's not really changing that much. It's more about potentially there is because that's sort of potentially later topography. So there's potentially like the basement is just a little bit higher. So as it's been weathered down, that it's shallower at BBM and outcropping, and then it could be a result of alteration. It could be like there are many factors that might influence that. But yeah, so the only thing to think about is the key thing to think about there is it's what does that do to the geochemistry, and really the geochemistry might not be, so the geochemistry on that where we're getting those is probably a little bit lower in tenor or grade than the geochemistry that we got over BBM. So it is lower, but the oxide profile is deeper, and so that may, we need to consider those things when we're deciding whether this is a real anomaly or not.
Well, I've been out of my depth since we mentioned Fremen in the first place, although I find that I've done a good job at pretending that I know what I'm talking about. But we might as well move on, because otherwise that's going to fall apart and everyone's going to know that I don't know what I'm talking about. But you are running that aeromagnetic survey this month on all 3 of the 100% permits. Give me a little bit of background on that. Why spend money on this instead of more drilling on a 5-kilometer trend?
Because we need to know where we are. It's back to that again, and that detailed magnetics. We know it works. It's been extremely helpful in the exploration that we've done on that ODNE West permit. And so what it does is allow us to do a subsurface structural interpretation. You can also do a lithological interpretation from them as well. it's not as good as the geochemistry, like as you would get if you're doing lithogeochemistry, but you can do what we call a kinematic interpretation of understanding our structures, understanding where intrusions are, and you're getting down on that detail, so you can actually start to, as long as there is that magnetic gradient, you can actually start to pick out some quite small intrusions as well. So, it's a really important piece of knowing where we are and where we should be spending more money on exploration. So spending $500,000 on flying aeromag over all three of those permits is that's Canadian dollars, is well and truly warranted, to make sure that as you do more exploration, which costs you more money, that you're actually spending that money in the right place. It's a fantastic targeting tool.
I thought we had already agreed on that you just drill an 800-meter deep hole in the bullseye of that mag, or something like that. That makes it easy and nice for me to understand.
We layer up the information.
What else is happening with the 100% land? What else am I missing here? Again, this news release from just from today, so I'm probably missing a bunch of stuff on it. But what else? What else is important here?
From the Fremen NR.
Yes.
Look, yeah, I mean the key thing is that we have is the fact that we've just extended that anomaly by five kilometers, and we mentioned it. The drilling has intercepted the right alteration, the right host rock geology, and high strain. Mm-hmm. So we're comfortable with where we are, and that we're chasing the right things, and that it absolutely warrants further exploration expenditure on those targets.
Well, I'll be looking forward to that. We'll hopefully talk about in the next couple of months again about the 100% stuff, and hopefully a bit more in depth at that point. Also more data to talk about. Maybe a brief update on Empire. Then you had a news release there since we last spoke as well. Your headline talks about 15 meters of 5.2 grams per ton, but the other hits are a bit lower grade. I mean, there's 3 grams, 2.3, 1.4 grams, although this one is over 40 meters, so a bit thicker. Yep. Was this expected? Did you expect more? Because this hasn't been drilled in a while, I believe, Empire. So what did you think?
No, so the first 5 holes were in areas that we knew was almost like infill, with the idea of being able to put a resource or start to put a resource around Empire as part of a resource inventory for next year. But the key thing in those first 5 holes currently was also to confirm our geometry and drill a deeper hole. And that deeper hole is the really nice thing about it, is that we've got 15 meters at 5 grams, which means that that there is continuity down dip and down plunge. And at those sort of grades, there is underground potential at Empire as well. So we've always said that we put Empire kind of on the shelf and we would come back to it when we got to this point. So now we are starting to think about resources within the joint venture, because that's part of Newmont's earn-in, is that 2 million ounces. And we think Empire can contribute to that inventory along with Charger and BBM. So that's why that last phase of drilling, there was quite a strong focus on those 3 targets, and also bringing Lando into play as well with some discovery drilling up there. But there was a clear decision to get more drilling into those 3 targets, thinking about a resource inventory for next year. But going back to Empire, no real surprises in the drilling. In all that early drilling, it's a nuggety gold system. So, one of those holes that's a broad interval that's sort of 2 grams, 1 to 2 grams. Well, if that hole was 5 meters, a little bit further in either direction, maybe that's 3 times that grade. So. So we've had some super high grade intercepts at Empire, and we know it's a nuggety gold system. It's very much a free gold system. So that's just normal variability and no surprise.
Hmm.
And like I said, the nice thing is that we've decided where we wanted to drill down dip and down plunge and got that 15 meters at 5, which really opens up that underground potential. So as long as there's enough ounces per vertical meter going down, you can think about going underground at Empire as well, which is significant.
Is Empire to Charger what Fremen is to BBM, or what's your thesis as to how it ties into the district here?
Um, no, yeah, no. Again, it's the age of the fluids, the age of the mineralization at all these places. We're confident that it's very similar.
Hmm.
You're just getting things manifest in different ways. So, if anything, Empire is more of a shear system, a little bit more like BBM, but it's not quite manifest exactly the same. So, but it is a more of a shear system, and it is sitting right in the middle of what we call the Empire Structural Corridor, which is a west-northwest striking structural corridor that goes for over 10 to 15 kilometres. And actually Charger is just off the northern margin of that structural corridor. But you know, we now that we understand our kinematics better and the system better from drilling things like BBM as well, we do think that there is a lot more potential along strike at Empire, and you know, there has to be a lot more discovery drilling at Empire outside that initial sort of resource zone that where we've done that drilling now. So we did a lot of RC drilling pre-Newmont. We got some scattered, very interesting results from that drilling, and we think there needs to be more follow-up from that as well. And that was dominantly toward the southeast, but we also want to open up towards the northwest there as well as some deeper drilling. So we see Empire as that sort of Empire corridor is very open.
When do you follow it up? How do you follow it up?
More drilling. So there'll be more drilling on there with in the next field season. So which starts in September, October
Hmm.
through to this time in 2026. So the outlook. So if we just, I don't know if you were going to ask a question on this, but the outlook for the joint venture is really what we're moving into is a greenfields brownfield situation. So, like I said before, we're really getting very close to that first couple of million ounces, and I've always said that I really don't want to go to market with anything until I've got a couple of million ounces at more than 2 grams. So that's the target, and that's Newmont's target as well. That's the sort of thing that they would like to see as part of that 2 million that initial 2 million ounces is something that's of a reasonable grade. So we're at a sort of a brownfields exploration stage with that sort of thing, more infill drilling, looking towards resources on BBM Charger Empire. And then there's alongside that, there'll be discovery drilling. And so there'll be more discovery. Well, if the Lando results are good, there'll be more discovery drilling up at Lando. As I mentioned, there's Empire Corridor discovery drilling there. I would like to see Scepter come into play with more discovery drilling there as well. So there will actually be a lot of drilling in that field season. That's coming up from September, October, and that will be. I mean, that's not finalised yet. So that's our team's wet season, or the Brownfields team's wet season job is to tighten up what will be sort of resource development drilling, BBM Charger Empire, and what will be discovery drilling on other parts of that ODNE joint venture property. But I think the budget should be significant, but that's all yet to come. So I think Q3, the start of Q3, we'll be announcing what that program's going to be looking like.
That's when we're going to see the 800-meter hole in Scepter.
I think we'll see some more drilling at Scepter, yeah. We
Deeper?
need to agree with Newmont exactly
Oh, that's fair.
what that's going to look like, but I think we will see some drilling at Scepter, yeah.
Well, I hope Newmont has a little bit of cowboyism in there in them and the way I do. When
Yeah.
what do you have in the news bank right now, though? I mean, I think we're waiting for some Lando news because that was drilled last.
Yep.
Deeper stuff from Charger. What do you have
Yeah.
coming?
Yeah, that's right. So Lando will be last cab off the rank. And then we've got the what we call BBM satellite. So within the joint venture ground, either extensions or small potential satellite pits to that BBM discovery. And it's not deep drilling yet at Charger really. We're sort of I think those four holes are about 250, 300 meters below surface. As I mentioned before, I mean those holes were in target geology, some significant widths of breccia. So our model for there is standing up, and they're not far away, those results. So they'll hopefully be in the next week or so. So we need to do our QC review and get them out, but we're hopeful that they'll be in this week. At a minimum, the gold results, and so again with Charger, where we've been the last release, we actually did release some holes without the ICP because it is a gold dominant system. So hopefully we'll get all that through in the next week, and then and then also the BBM satellite, and then Lando's a bit further down the track because we know from the drilling that there is copper, well, chalcopyrite molybdenite mineralization with the in the core and the chips that we drilled there. So we would like to see the ICP results along with the Lando release.
So Charger this month,
Was yes,
it's middle of June now, so
yes, yeah,
June
yeah.
16th.
So yes, Charger
Okay.
this month, and hopefully BBM satellites as well this month.
Oh, all of that this month. Good.
Yeah,
And then
hopefully.
Lando is what you're gonna, I suppose, I don't know, go quiet
Lando's
for the
going to be
summer
in
or
July sometime. Yeah,
okay in July. Oh, that's good. I thought maybe it skipped July. I've talked to a
yeah.
lot of people who tell me, we're not going to do anything in July essentially.
Yeah, I think. Well, I think that's the thing. Like, so we've started. We're drilling. We'll be doing more drilling on the Cienzo on the 100% ground, and we're trying to drill some more holes, some deeper holes at Charger, and deeper holes at BBM before the wet season really kicks in as well.
Mm.
So, we've got, it is coming into summer and maybe there's not as many eyes, but I think July is still okay. And so we really, from our perspective, it's going to be so busy that we need to let everyone. We should get everything out and get the results through for the drilling that we're doing now or before the wet season kicks in, and so then we're ready for a lot more drilling in our next dry season. So it's busy, so we don't need to. We're not in a position where we need to sort of wait or anything like that. We can just continually report to market as long as the labs are keeping up.
Yeah. You started working these when did you start? 2018, I believe, is when you when the spin out of Awale essentially happens. That's what the beginning of the story really is, right?
Yeah, that's right. Late 2017. Yeah.
Yeah. What is and all the work that you've done since, you're going to do more work this year than all the work you've done in the prior years combined. What
Yeah,
is
probably.
what's the reaction of the local community or local communities? Because it's a large land package. I know there's a couple of towns or villages in between. What's their reaction to it?
It's been extremely positive. I think there are always some people, of course, like they don't understand what we're doing, and we're working hard to help them understand what we're doing. But the Odieni district, or that northwest of Côte d'Ivoire, is sort of one of that region. I think is one of the lowest earning kind of regions in Côte d'Ivoire, if you like. So what we're doing is, well, what we will be doing is creating opportunities, and so that's been really well received. And you know, a couple of months ago there was a symposium in ODNA called the Dengale, like it was organised by the government and about development for the ODNE district. And Awale absolutely participated in that. It's at like a regional conference. We had a stand. Our country manager Ben spoke to the community. The lecture hall where he spoke was completely packed with people. I'm talking hundreds of people, not just 10. And so we're really working on our community awareness, and I think we're very well received at this stage, and we will keep working hard to keep it that way.
Hmm. What about the security situation, if you will, or geopolitically, because of you being in the north region of Cote d'Ivoire? And we've talked about Cote d'Ivoire at depth. We did an interview, I think, about an hour and a half. Was it that we just talked specifically about that? So again, I'll note that in the description so people can get a better understanding of the jurisdiction. But how has that developed? Any changes from the security perspective, or anything changing really?
No, there's no change. It's the status quo has remained the same. And this is the thing. These are the things that the Ivorian government are, they're aware of what's going on, and so they're, they're interested in development dollars in those northern regions, because the keeping the standard of living and the happiness of people together in those northern regions is a key to ensuring the security to the northern regions as well. And so there is significant investment by the government in those sorts of things as well. So, where we've always said that it's a very safe area. We've had security assessments, so Newmont has done security like independent consultancies have come, and they've spent time on site and looked, and met with all the military, police, local stakeholders, done their own surveys independent of us. And they're all positive, extremely positive reports around how things are being handled in the region.
Mm. You've got an election coming up, I think.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's true.
2025.
Yep.
Yeah.
So end of October, it'll be the last Sunday in October.
Okay. Because the current sitting president has been there since 2011. Is it fair to expect him to, be replaced?
Yep. I think no. So he is going to stand.
Okay.
So that's there in play. He is going to stand. So and look, to be honest, there have been some interesting goings on around who is allowed to stand under Ivorian law. One of the main opposition guys, his name was Tidiane Tiam, and Tiam is actually a former head of Credit Suisse, was based in Zurich for a long time, all this sort of thing. So he was actually forced to take his name off the register because apparently he hadn't. He was meant to have handed back his French citizenship before he stood for the presidency, or said he was going to put himself on the electoral roll. Apparently, there was a time discrepancy. He has relinquished, but he's been struck off the electoral roll, and so there is some oddities in there, but in the scheme of things, it hasn't perturbed our confidence in process. And there hasn't been any significant issues. There hasn't been any big protests. There hasn't been like any of those sorts of things at this stage. And usually, we're getting very close to that time. Usually by now you would see if there was sort of unrest around what's going on with candidates and what's happening, you would usually have seen things being telegraphed by now. So there is still confidence in what's coming for the election. And you know, I'll say it again, is that the fact that the standard of living has come up significantly in Côte d'Ivoire since 2012. That, you know, that is one of the key things that I think the population is generally happy with this increase in standard of living and the opportunities that are you know, opening up in Côte d'Ivoire. So you know, we think it will stay that way. And yeah, but we always, as always, we watch with interest. And but at the moment, there are no indicators that we're concerned about.
So there's no expected changes in permitting or anything like that. You know, flip flop in the government from, oh, we want to support exploration mining, from we don't want to. That's not something you're expecting.
No. So at that level, you know, the all the way through the ministry and the direction general, the department underneath, you know, there is this really strong positive view on the direction that the mining and exploration industry is taking in Côte d'Ivoire, and we really don't see that changing.
How's the I actually recently interviewed one of your directors, Carl, for his other company, and I asked him the same question. What about from your perspective? I mean, now that more and more money and more companies are pouring into Côte d'Ivoire, how's the permitting speed going to go? Do you think things are going to get bogged down and, you know, in the governments and on the local level, or how do you expect that to go?
Well, hopefully with the new mining code, it would, when they actually implement that, it should speed up. So there is some small changes in there around sign off on new permits. So there's the same due process of checking who you are, what your history is, you know, the level of technical expertise and financial capability within the company that's applying for those permits. But there is a change from permits being signed off by the ministry rather than the president. So that should actually, you know, hopefully speed up the permitting process a little bit. But you know, it's still the same due process, which will go on with the permitting. But hopefully it does speed up a little bit.
Well, even though all this work has happened, you said security, government, locals, everyone's happy. All this work has happened. You're making progress geologically and everything. Your share price is still down since the high grade hit on Charger last spring now. What do you think is causing this? Why is the market not giving you more upside? And what do you think will fix that eventually?
Yeah, I mean, I do have a thesis on that. I think what people at the moment, so the thing is that we have only been able to drill on the joint venture. And so you've got Newmont earning in on that, and people looking at what the end game is, which is Awale having sort of roughly 25% pre-fee, like at the end of that earning. And then people looking at the fact that, well, people are looking at BBM and Charger and Empire and all these things and saying, well, potentially there's 2 million ounces today, and Awale's got 25% of that. And so that provides a ceiling on our valuation. And so how do you break that? Well, you bring in a company like Fortuna, who sees the potential in the 100% ground, and then you use that money to actually make discoveries on the 100% ground, and I think that will change the share price significantly. As far as the joint venture is concerned, that is what it is, and it's, you know, I've discussed it ad infinitum particularly over the last 6 to 12 months, in that there is still upside potential in the 100% properties, which is why Newmont is still spending money. So, you know, I think we're getting valued on 25% of a 2 million ounce project today If at the end of the earning period, we're still seeing Newmont spending money, then I think that should be an indicator to market that, oh, hang on a minute, Newmont is still spending money on the project. There is tier one Newmont scale potential here, and our valuation shouldn't be limited to 25% of 2 million ounces.
Yeah.
So I think that's been a real sort of glass ceiling for us, which has been difficult to break through, and in a way a little bit beyond our control because of the Newmont earning. So other companies that are on 2 million ounces, their valuation is significantly higher. I won't go through who they all are. I know who they are. And so that's just one of the problems. But then is it a problem? It means that somebody else is spending the bulk of the money, and we don't actually have to dilute, and we're working towards a tier one project. Or on the other hand, so sometime early next year or whenever that may be, Newmont decides that they step back. We've got a 2 million ounce project with an excellent, another excellent supporter on the register in Fortuna. I think that is a significant upside for us as well. So, I don't necessarily lose sleep over what the outcome might be for Awale, because I think all the outcomes are good ones. Some outcomes will give us an even bigger kick. So I think a discovery on the 100% ground is a big kicker for us, right? A really big kicker. Newmont stepping back, I think people might be initially perturbed, like, oh no, Newmont's going. But the point is that Newmont's going, but we've already got these resources. So, that's really shouldn't be a problem. And it's, I guess, up to me to explain to people what the situation is there and why it's a good thing. Or Newmont stays in and we're on a tier one. We're working our way towards a tier one project with Newmont spending the dominant portion of the expenditure. And so that should be a significant uptick in valuation for Awale as well. So there's just, I guess there's different scales of what the uptick is based on those different parameters. And so there's there's significant room for growth in our share price and our capitalization with any of those outcomes. I think any of those outcomes are positive outcomes for the company.
A bit of housekeeping maybe here before we close it off, because I know you almost have to go here, Andrew, but I noticed that your salaries and director fees in the new financial statement that you published and other benefits, they've almost, not quite, but almost doubled for the last reported quarter, which ended on March 31st versus the same quarter of last year. You have some other stuff. So office and regulatory also up a little bit, up a little bit in absolute amounts. In relative amounts, it's up a lot, but investor relations is down a little bit. And then share-based compensation has been cut in half. Do you expect, well, I'm asking you this is, do you expect anything to change in your G&A to go anywhere from here? Because I understand, the increase here, I understand, because the first quarter of last year was quite different than the first quarter of this year in terms of drilling and everything. But do you expect your G&A to change going forward, or is it going to stay where it's at?
So I think what you're seeing, so no one's actually had any salary increases. What you're actually seeing is increasing our capacity. So before earlier I talked about JV team Awale, regional team. So we've increased our capacity to manage 100% Awale and the Newmont joint venture. So I think that's what I would see as the change in there, because as the board and management, there's been no change. Then as we progress into spending more money on the 100% Awale properties, I think there's potential that could go up as well. But on the other hand, we'll also be spending more money on the joint venture, so our management fee goes up too.
Yeah.
So we're really going to be pushing hard over the next 2 years, and it's going to be an extremely busy time for Awale. But all that is going to be what creates value for the company and our shareholders.
So you're not necessarily planning to go heavier in marketing or start spending more money on the corporate level?
I think, our marketing budget is significant already. Um, and I'm always open to advice on, maybe how we can make we're always looking for ways to make our marketing better. But, at the moment we have an online presence. We do a lots of, video content, just with me trying to explain our news releases. We do a conference circuit, which I don't think is overdone. It's really important to meet people face to face. I think people will tell you. I think any CEO will tell you that face to face meetings are really important along with online meetings. So we are always trying different things as far as marketing is concerned. And the hardest part with marketing is actually a metric. So, but we are always trying different things and open to different marketing ideas. But we do, at the moment, I think we've got a pretty good balance between sort of online social media presence, face-to-face presence, and doing interviews like we're doing now with various different outlets to try and increase the awareness of Awale.
Yeah. It's a sane approach. You also have a new IR person who's helped you, in my opinion, approve the communications. The budget is cut. You've gotten better at communicating, so you got much more efficient, which I do like. Credit where credit is due. I do also notice that your accounts payable on the current liability side of the balance sheet have more than tripled, though, against the same quarter last year, which again makes sense given that you've ramped up the exploration program. But are the obligations that you have here, they're a little bit north of $2.7 million, and this is US. Are they currently, are they under control? And the vendors happy? Are they getting paid? What's going on in country?
Yeah, no, so that's okay. Like some of that, it's taxation in Côte d'Ivoire. We always put in, significant sort of what do you call it? I just forgot the term, but we allow for adjustments in taxation because it's always a negotiation and things like that. So that everything I wouldn't, where it's just that is really just running on a quarter by quarter basis, really. So there would be, drilling invoices and things like that have come right at the end of that quarter, which then just get evened out into the next quarter as far as our budget's concerned. Exploration is an odd business in that everything is a little bit of a moving target on availability and when things actually happened as opposed to when they're planned. So, but yeah, there is no, we do keep our accounts under control. That's for sure.
Yeah. Again, happy that it's you now, because I think going back in time, it might have been different as well. But yeah, Andrew, I think I've been through most of what I wanted to ask you, though I'm probably forgetting to ask you something. And everyone who's watching or listening, you're welcome to tell me what I've forgotten to ask so I can ask it next time. But what about you, Andrew? What do you think? What did you come here hoping to talk about that I failed to bring up?
Well, I think we pretty much covered. I mean, the key thing for me was that Fortuna investment really does put us in a really solid position for any outcomes. So we talked about those outcomes. So whatever Newmont decides to do, whether we're paying, as part of the joint venture starting to contribute, does Newmont decide that, well, no, actually the project's not actually going to trip our hurdles? We're well positioned for that. And we've got, and now we've got the right amount of runway to really go into our 100% ground and make make discoveries on our 100% ground, which is really exciting stuff for us. I mean, I guess in many ways where the team is an exploration team at heart, and so that's a real sort of shot in the arm for the team as well, which is really quite nice.
Here's actually one I saw again. Your IR person Artem, he's bought I think a couple of times in the market since he joined the company, but I haven't seen any other insiders buy. Even though Again, you said earlier that you think Awale is essentially undervalued. You don't think the market's recognizing the full value, and I suspect you not buying has something to do with the fact that you've had almost constant drilling and news in hand, essentially, so blacked out from that perspective. But do you expect to be buying in the open market this year, either yourself or any other insiders?
Um, I'd like to be able to, but I think this is one of the things that when I did take over, all that sort of backlog that I had, most of like more than half of the backlog of me not being paid actually went into Awale at that point. So I think at PDAC, was it this year, you were asking, did people put their house on would you put your house on? Effectively, I did that in 2023. Is put a significant amount of my money, and it's honest, I've been correcting my personal financial situation since then. And so hopefully it would be nice if from toward the end of this year and early next year that I'm back in a position where I can actually put more money into Awale. I definitely would. But yeah, so I really have everything. My only investment is Awale. That's the honest truth. My only investment is Awale.
Well, don't let your wife hear that. We might have to cut that last part out for the time when you show it to her. We'll leave it out for everyone else, but most of us are degens who understand, going all in on things like that. But what keeps you up at night then? I mean, having your only investment as a junior an exploration company, really, what keeps you up at night?
Oh, look, we've been talking about Newmont and what they're going to do is so, because things do take time with a big company like Newmont. So the discussions around what a joint venture might look like beyond the end of the earning, those discussions are opened because it's not far away. So Newmont is already, that door is open and we're starting to talk about what a joint venture might look like at the end of the earning. And so they've intimated that they're interested in continuing at this stage. And so that's something that is important to work out. So that's probably and make sure that we're in a position where where Awale is in the best position we possibly can from a moving forward in a joint venture.
Good. Well, let's keep it here. I appreciate your time. Hopefully we'll speak again sometime soon, or this summer for sure. But yeah, I appreciate you saying that. I mean, thank you so much.
Thanks, Antonio. Cheers, mate.
And as always, thanks to everyone for watching Resource Talks. I have a couple of more things to say, though. The fact that this company was interviewed here today does not mean that they're necessarily a good or a bad company. I'm not here to endorse nor attack anyone. I am simply here to ask some questions. If you find that I have failed in asking a question that you would have liked to hear an answer to, which will happen as I'm not an experienced interviewer, please let me know and I will try to correct that mistake in a future interview. As mentioned at the beginning, please understand that mineral exploration and development is an extremely risky business. Losing money is the norm and should be the expectation. This is a very complex sector, and the performance of individual companies typically depends on many different moving particles, including company-specific factors like geology, financing ability, and many others, really, as well as particles that are outside of the company's control, like geopolitics, macroeconomics, commodity prices, and many more, most of which are nearly impossible to fully understand. Moreover, these companies that typically get interviewed on Resource Talks are in the pre-revenue stage, which means they rely on the public markets for the financing of their operations, which could result in shareholder dilution. Furthermore, as a general rule of thumb, you'll be better off understanding that all company communications online, albeit this interview or their website and their presentation and their social media accounts, or even the social media accounts which you thought were your friends and then told you about a stock, everything really that these companies do is intended as marketing. And although I do not make buy or sell recommendations because there is a clear conflict of interest given the nature of my business, many out there do. And you should be aware of that inherent bias, and you should be careful out there. That bias is not always going to be clearly disclosed with everyone out there. So it is safer for you anytime you're watching any type of company specific content to approach it with a dose of skepticism and assume that the party telling you about it is biased in at least some shape or form, because there will always be a bias, again, albeit clear or not. So always ask yourself what the incentive of your counterparty is and never rely on them regardless of their incentives, but instead double check if what they're saying is true, again, by using setterplus.ca. The fact that I have no idea what I'm doing should already be clear to you at this point. I am not saying this to make jokes or laugh with myself. I just simply do not have a long enough track record of consistent investment profits. So I should under no circumstances be considered an authority on anything. Again, although this may sound amusing to you, believe me, it is not amusing, and it is not intended as a joke. I'm simply pointing out a fact and warning you not to rely on anything I do or say. Unfortunately, at least to my understanding, nobody out there has any special abilities. The CEOs do not possess any superior knowledge, and they cannot know about what will go up, what will go down, or what will go in circles. Some people even believe that to be rule number one on Wall Street. Nobody really knows. None of us know whether any of the company's activities will result in a success, again, given that we're talking about high-risk activities where most of the times it ends in failure. So unfortunately, try as I may, I won't always catch all red flags or all challenges with the companies. So even if I did ask a few tough questions in here, don't rely on this being all of the tough questions. Again, these are complicated startups with many moving parts, and I am conflicted given the nature of this business. Therefore, I cannot guarantee the quality of anything presented in this video, and you cannot hold me responsible for any losses or damages stemming from the way you decide to use this interview. Viewers, listeners, and readers acknowledge and agree that the information presented herein did not constitute a solicitation or an offer to buy or sell any security or investment or to participate in any trading strategy. Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business strictly disclaim any and all liability for losses and or damages, whether direct, indirect, special, or consequential, or other consequences, however so caused, arising out of any use or reproduction of the content published by Resource Talks or any decision made or action taken in reliance upon it. By consuming this content, all consumers vow to release Resource Talks and all parties involved in the management of the business from all claims, proceedings, or consequences. This is all to say, I know it's a lot of lawyer talk, but this is all to say that you shouldn't blindly trust me or anybody on the internet, and you should do your own research. Once again, social media is meant for entertainment. It is setterplus.ca where you do your research. That's where you'll find a company's official filings, and I encourage you to read and analyze the Management Information Circular, the financial statements, the Management Discussion and Analysis, and whenever available, the NI 43-101 technical documents. If you don't understand everything in those documents, the chances of you losing money are even higher than they normally are in this space. And as mentioned earlier, the chances of even the best analysts in this sector losing money are extremely high, since this is venture capital and it is not for everybody. I'll leave you with one of Charlie Munger's quotes, which I wish I had listened to more often earlier on, which says, quote, "If you don't understand it, don't do it."